Welcome to Amazing Indiana Music Stories.
Born and raised in Indianapolis, Indiana, raised on the near north side, 30th and Broadway, went to School 76, which is now a senior citizen home, attended Mapleton Fall Creek, and eventually went to Crispus Attucks High School here in Indianapolis. I grew up in my grandfather's Baptist church, Mount Calvary Missionary Baptist Church, that was on 18th and Senate. It is now the same address, 1801 North Senate is the same address as Methodist Hospital now. So that was my grandfather's church address. And I sang in church. I began singing in church. My mother sang. She was a PK, so she passed down her prowess as a singer on to me, and she was also a visual artist, and she passed that on to my older brother George. And then we had a younger brother, Walter Aaron, who passed away when he was 18. But there were three of us. We grew up in Indianapolis singing and drawing and acting and all of the things that young kids like to get into. My parents made sure that we were totally immersed in the arts scene here in Indianapolis. My mother used to take us all to Starlight musicals. That was part of Butler University at one time. And we would go and see all the musicals that would come through and also the concerts that came through. I remember going to see Gladys Knight. And I don't even know if she had the Pips with her. But I do remember seeing her. And my mother would always take us out to a white tablecloth restaurant so that we could learn how to present ourselves in public and to eat well and then go enjoy a show of some sort. So she was very much into the arts, and she made sure that we were too. There was always music playing in the house, so we would always clean the home to music on Saturday mornings. And then, like I stated before, singing in my grandfather's church, I had my first solo at church when I was 5 years old. And it was "You Can't Beat God's Giving, No Matter How You Try." So that was the offering song. And I think I'm the only person in the world who knew all the verses to that as well. And then going from singing in church, I began to sing a lot around the city. There was, of course, the Indiana Black Expo. I would sing for the luncheon. But that was even after I had started to sing. I was a brownie at 9 years old in scouting. And it was we would meet at Broadway United Methodist Church. And I remember doing a brownie beauty pageant. Okay. And I actually sang or lip sync. Well, I didn't really lip sync. My mother turned the music way down low, put on a record of Roberta Flack singing "Killing Me Softly," and I sang over it. And so that was my first foray into singing in public, other than in my grandfather's church. And then it just went on. It just went on. I have always sung for the opening of an envelope, and that's what really got me going, got me started.
Wonderful. So, I had read that you were also singing in some soul groups.
I didn't really sing in a soul group. I think they got that wrong. But one time, I sang in a group that performed for a Pacer game. And we sang some Aretha Franklin music. So that was with a good friend of mine, Gerald Chaney, who now lives in Chicagoland area. And he's also, I think, he sings a lot for the ball games there in Chicago. So that was his group. And that was the one time I sang with a soul group here in Indianapolis as a youngster. Now I did Later on in life, I was the vocal coach for the IU Soul Review. So I guess technically I have sung all the genres of music, because in being the at IU, in being the vocal coach for the Soul Review, I had to teach the students how to sing this music without hurting themselves. So yeah.
Wonderful. So, when were you first exposed to opera?
Ooh, I would say my first exposure to opera. See, when I was coming up in school here in Indianapolis, they would take us to different cultural engagement programming, the symphony, the opera, the ballet. So I always knew about opera. I never really thought that I would ever be an opera singer. You know, it wasn't something that I set my focus towards, to sing classical music. But I do remember one Saturday morning cleaning up the house, right before Soul Train came on, okay? There was the Saturday morning cartoons, then they would have Schoolhouse Rock. So I knew all those little Confunction Junction, what's that function? You know, I knew all of those little songs. And then they would have a commercial of this beautiful black lady with an afro, and it was for the United Negro College Fund. And just so happens it was Leontine Price. And she would sing, reaching for the dreams that spell tomorrow. I'm not singing today, it sounds crazy. But, but she would sing that song. And I was enamored with her. Now, I was a teenager, a young teenager at that time. And I just remembered her. And later, as time passed on, I ended up being in the chorus of Indianapolis Opera's production of Aida in I want to say it was 83, between 83 and 85, I'm not sure with the date. And I was one of the Ethiopian captives, along with a bunch of my other friends from Indianapolis that I have known forever and ever and ever, that are still in the music business, like Monica Cantrell and Billy Meyer, who was my Ethiopian husband. Yes, Billy was my Ethiopian husband in that production. And so, and then there were so many others that I can't even remember the names of. But that was my first pinky toe dip into the opera world. And then life happened as it would, that I ended up going to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and then on to Indiana University. So I'll let you ask the question.
Oh, certainly. Well, that does lead me on
Okay.
to. So, did you always want a career in music, or did you study anything else besides music?
No, I've always wanted a career in music. I didn't know it was gonna be a career. I just knew I wanted to sing, and that I was singing. You know, I always say opera chose me. I didn't choose it, because I never wanted to be a screechy soprano, though I hope I'm not so screechy now. I just, at the time, I didn't know that I had the voice to sing operatically, and didn't know what it would take to become a classical singer. I just knew that I had a gift. And I sang every other genre of music before I picked up classical music. And that was the last music that I came to. And my mother told me as I was studying, she was like, Angie, actually it was my mother and a girlfriend of mine. My mother said, Angie, classical music is what's going to put you on the world stage. And I was like, yeah, right. And then my girlfriend, when I was at Oakwood University, I would do a lot of, singing across the campus. It was a religious institution, so it was either I was singing in church, or I was singing with the choir, or I was singing for, my degree in some sort of way. And so whenever there were competitions or talent nights or whatever, you would have, because it was a religious institution, it was either music or preaching. One side of the campus they were preaching, the other side they were singing, and then they would meet in the middle sometimes. But a girlfriend of mine heard me, and she said, Angie, because I was singing everything, she was like, when you sing gospel music, because it was heavy gospel, she said, when you sing gospel music, you can step out there with the best. But when you sing classical music, you are head and shoulders above the rest. So I always remembered that. And my mother was right, and so was she.
That's fantastic. So when did you find yourself beginning to, be educated in singing operatically, and who taught you, if you were?
Well, I went to Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and I started studying with Ginger Beasley, who I say is the author of my voice. I've always had the talent to sing, but it was something about the classical technique once I started to learn more about how to use my voice, and learning about placement and breathing and support and articulation and the different languages and the dictions and all that. I just took to the technique like a duck to water. I had no problems when it came to singing, producing a classical sound. I will say that I've always been a big ham, as my daddy would say, and I mocked or I mimicked my teacher. So she would sing in my lessons, and I was like, okay, so basically make the sound she's making, because this is what she's wanting you to do. So I started to make the sounds she was making, and she was like, but it's so good and it's so right. How can you do that? Well, I just had the talent. I just could do it. I had the ear. So, like I tell everyone, opera chose me. I didn't choose it. And I took to the technique like a duck to water. And my teacher there at Oakwood University would take her studio to Indiana University, okay, to study with her teacher, Virginia Zayani, who was a world-renowned Romanian soprano. And her husband, Nicolae Rosilameni, also was a teacher there at Indiana University. So I remember one semester, Mrs. Beasley took us all to from Huntsville, Alabama, back to my back door, Bloomington, Indiana. And we had a weekend of master classes and talks with Ms. Zayani. And so I remember standing up, singing what I had prepared for Ms. Zayani, and I was a mezzo soprano or an alto, a mezzo soprano at the time. And after I sang, Mrs. Zayani turned to Mrs. Beasley and says, Ginger, Angela is not a mezzo soprano. She is a Verdian soprano. The blood of Verdi courses through her veins. Then she turns to me and she goes, Angela, when you are done with Ginger, I take you in my studio. And I was like, okay. And this was in 1991. So I went from Oakwood University to Indiana University to start studying on my my master's degree, or my artist diploma is what I was going for. And it just worked out for me.
Wonderful. So this kind of leads to the beginning of your opera career. And was it difficult to get started? And we actually have a program from an audition you did for the Metropolitan Opera.
Let me look at that.
Of course.
This was in 1996. Oh, this was. Oh, okay. This was after I had. Let me see what I sang. I was number 1 on that. It was 32. This was actually after I had done the Metropolitan Opera competition 4 times. This was the last time I could do it.
We have some programs from some of the
Programming.
some of the performances you did.
Oh, okay. The Soul Review
Mhm.
and yep, tribute to Black History Month and the Very Direct Window. See, when I gave y'all that box of stuff, you know, it's a box of memorabilia. I didn't sit and go through all of that. It would have just been too much. But now, I'm like, oh.
What was your time at IU like, and what kind of programs and I guess performances did you do there?
Yeah, well, at IU, you know, when I got to IU, I thought that I would be a little fish in a big pond. I was so scared and overwhelmed, and I ended up getting on the campus to find that I was a big fish in a big pond. And I would never say that about me, but it just happened to happen that way. They say talent will take you where you want to go. And I did have the talent. When I first got to IU, I had to go through the whole process of having an advisor to tell you about what classes and all of that. So I had my advisor. And so I'm sitting there and I'm talking with him. And so I had in my mind that I wanted to get the artist diploma and not the master's. And so he was like, so why do you want the artist diploma instead of the master's? And me and my wide-eyed self, I said, because I imagine myself singing on the stages of the world, and I want to prepare for that career that I'm going to have. And he was like, how many, and this is what he said now, this is my truth. He says, how many little black girls do you think come here and say that, because what I said to him was, I see myself being the next Leontine Price singing on the stages of the world. He says, how many little black girls do you think come in here and say that same thing, want to be the next Leontine Price and sing on the stages of the world? Get the master's degree, honey. And I was like, okay. I took it because my daddy knows me. He was like, don't give Angela a challenge. Because if you give her a challenge, she's going to stand up to it. And I stood up to it. I went for my artist diploma because I knew what I could do and what I wanted to do. And no one was going to tell me that I couldn't do it. Now, yes, what he said definitely lives in the spectrum of truth, okay? Because just to jump to now, then to go back, I'm going back now to get my master's degree. You have to, in this life, live your life, because it's the only one you get. And if you're always taking in somebody else's fear of what is the possibility, the realm of possibility, it might have been your story. It doesn't have to be mine. It doesn't have to be mine. So needless to say, I went on and did what I had to do, and then I ended up singing on the stage of the world. Now they compare me to Leontine Price all the time. Hey, how you doing? It's the truth. You have to live your own life. So anyway, back to IU. Got to IU, started studying with Virginia Zayani. It was cattle call auditions for the whole school to come out and audition for different roles that were going to be presented, because IU is they call it the music factory, okay? And they had, at the time I was there, it was opera every Saturday night of the year, not just of the school year, of the year. There was always something on the Musical Arts Center stage. So at the time, Dean Charles Webb was the dean of the School of Music. And I had done my cattle call audition, and he was unable to attend. This is his story, okay? He says he was in his office and he was, filling out, doing dean stuff while he was listening to the recorded cattle call auditions. And he's listening and he's writing and he's doing whatever he does. And then I come up and I'm number 120. And he goes and he's starting to listen to me do Visi d'arte. And he looks up at the screen and he goes, Pam. Pam was his secretary at the time. He says, Pam, who is this? And she comes in, she looks at the screen, she looks at the page, and she says, that's number 120, Angela Brown. He was like, okay. So he put a pin in that. So later on, either it was that same day or that week, I got a call from Dean Webb. And he said, Angela, I heard your cattle call audition. And I would like to know if you would do a concert with me. I had never met Dean. I didn't know. I was like, huh? He was like, well, this is what has happened. He says, our soprano, Teresa Kubiak, who was on the faculty at the time, had gotten sick and was supposed to do this concert with him at the Honeywell House in, where is the Honey? In Wabash or Attica, one of the two, I'm not sure, Indiana. And he was like, and we have to do this, I have to do this concert. But I was wondering if you have some repertoire that we could put together and throw a quick concert together. And I was like, yes, sir. So I pulled what I knew because it was just that quick. I tell students all the time, it's better to be prepared with no opportunity than to have the opportunity and not be prepared. So just so happens I had music. It didn't all have to be classical music. It was all genres of music, everything that I've ever done my whole life, from musical theater, gospel, spirituals, arias, art song, everything that I had ever done. We pulled that together, and he did some piano pieces as well to fill out, and we went and did that concert. From that point, I became the quote-unquote voice of IU, and I would go all over the IU system with Dean Charles Webb, and we would do these concerts for different IU university schools throughout Indiana. And then we ended up doing things in Florida, and that was an IU chapter in Florida. So I would go to, do something there. And we even went to Cape Town, South Africa, through the auspices of the international school. Now, actually, they had invited me, and then I invited Dean. So, yeah, so we became quite a team at IU. And during that time, of course, I got a chance to do some opera on the stage at the Musical Arts Center. So while I was there singing with the dean, I was also part of the African American Arts Institute, and I was the vocal coach for the IU Soul Review. So on top of my duties there, taking classes as a student in the music school, singing with the dean, I was just all over the place. And I was also competing in the Metropolitan Opera competitions. Well, with the Met competition, you have a district, a regional, and the finals. They used to have semifinals and then finals, but now I just think they have the three, just the districts, the regionals, and the finals. And so I did it for 4 years in a row. I would always place in the districts, okay? It was no problem. District was just in your area, and I would always win the district. Well, whenever I would get to the regionals, that's when you're bringing students from everywhere, I would always miss the mark in some kind of way, you know. So I would either place second, and one time I placed third. So it seemed like the regionals was my Achilles heel, and I was never going to be able to pass out of that. Well, the age limit was 33. I was already an older student coming back to school. When I started at Oakwood, I was 21 or 22. Then once I got to IU, I was 27. And then, you know, I'm getting ready to leave IU. I was at IU about 6 years, don't judge me. And I was 32 when I got to the regionals, and I made it through. Finally, I made it through. And so I ended up turning 33. 33 was the age limit. I ended up turning 33 at the time of the competition in New York City. And I ended up winning. So it just goes to show you, I mean, because so many things in my life seems like it happens like that. But I have been the oldest and the longest overnight sensation in the world, because nothing has happened overnight. I won the Metropolitan Opera competition in '97. I was still a student at IU. I decided to leave school before I got the degree because I was actually doing what I set out to do, and the reason why you go to school is to do what you say you want to do. So my career came a-calling. Right after that, things just started bubbling and happening, and I was singing with symphony orchestras and doing recitals here and there, and I didn't actually get to the Met until 2001. I decided that I was going to move to New York City in 1999, and I remember, I can tell you this story. I remember a rainy, very stormy night, October 17, 1999. Flying to New York City, had talked to my cousin that I had just met a few years before, and her son she said, if you have to come to New York, you can stay with us. Well, her son graduated from Hampton University, and he was back home. So she was like, I can't keep you, but I'll find somewhere where you can stay. So got to New York that day, had bought my brand new Samsonite luggage. This might be more than you want to know. I should save it for the book. But the luggage was broken once I got it off the turnstile. So she had one side of the luggage, I had the other, and we had to walk to her car in pouring rain. Okay? So everything in the luggage is damp and wet. And so we get to the house in Jamaica, Queens, New York, where I was staying. There was this little lady from her church that ran a boarding home. When she opened up the screen door, this cat jumps out and runs into the night. Well, I'm allergic to cats, okay? So I get there, it's a well-appointed home, you know, and there are elderly people there. So it was a home, you know, that she ran, you know, and rented out rooms in this big home that she had. So anyway, she takes me to the room that I'm staying in, occupying. And little did I know that was the room that the cat Stayed in, yeah. And so the next day when I woke up, I was bit from head to toe with flea bites. So I go ahead, get myself together because I'm scratching and I mentioned she set off a bomb in the room. So while she was fumigating, I had to leave. So I had to go and find out, see the lay of the land, where the grocery store is, where the laundromat is, where, all the things that you need to know. And I decided to take a ride on the train so that I can figure out how to be a New Yorker. Okay, but when you're a New Yorker in Jamaica, Queens, it's totally different than being a New Yorker that lives in Manhattan. It took 2 buses and a train, 3 trains and 2, I don't know. It was a long time for me to get to the Upper West Side. Now, I had been to the Metropolitan Opera because remember I told you I won the competition. So I had been in Manhattan. I didn't know about all this other stuff. So I was trying to figure out life during those few hours while she was fumigating the room. So I get back and I had gone to the grocery store and I decided that I wanted, was going to put, she said, there's a cabinet that you can put your things in the kitchen. And so I'm trying to figure out which one is the cabinet. And as I open up one of the doors, one of her pets jumps off on me. Now, I say her pets, but there was an undesirable insect that jumped on me, and I was like, I can't take it. So, we go through the week. At the end of the week, I decide to go to this lecture by Christa Ludwig, who was a famous German mezzo-soprano who had her book done in German years ago, but it was being re-released into English. And she was there giving her lecture, and I was at Mannes College. And so I'm looking across the room and I see a girlfriend that I went to Oakwood with. And she is Dr. Gerald Cunningham Fleming now. And we decided to meet after, at the intermission point, have lunch, and we got to talking. And so she says, where are you staying? I said, out in Jamaica, Queens. She said, Angela, that's too far. And I was like, well, what do I do? What do I know? She said, come stay with me. I was like, girl, please. I had $2,500 that I had saved up. I said I could do anything for 6 weeks. This lady was charging me, this is a long time ago, y'all. This lady was charging me $80 to stay in her house per week. Per week. Okay, not even a day or an hour, but per week. And so I was like, well, I can give you the money that I was going to pay her if that's good enough for you. And she was like, let's just, work it out. Let's see what happens. Well, to make a long story short, she and I had also, one of the reasons why I was in New York is that I was going to audition for the Metropolitan Opera to get additional funds. I wasn't even thinking as far ahead as auditioning to be on the stage with them. I was just going because I was already a winner of the Metropolitan Opera. They want to help you with your career. So you can come back and audition for additional $5,000. So I was like, I'm going to go and audition for that money. And so while I was there going through all this I was going through, all of that's the backdrop, okay? I got the flu. And my girlfriend came to pick me up, and she was like, it's all right. So I left that situation with that lady, bless her soul, that she took me in when she did. I had a week to get it together to know that I can do anything except that. And so anyway, I ended up, my girlfriend came to pick me up, not really knowing that I was going from the frying pan into the fire. Yeah. I get to her apartment, which is we call it a garden apartment, okay, which means it's a basement apartment that had carpeting but no padding. I didn't find this out until it got cold enough. Had wood paneling with no insulation. And that the heat worked sometimes. We heated the apartment with the stove open. They tell you not to do that now, but when you cold, you do what you gotta do. And she didn't have much furniture. She had milk crates up in her apartment, and but she was very meticulous about her library because she was a musician too. Very meticulous about her library. So she had all her albums and CDs and papers and everything all organized in these milk crates. And then in her bedroom, she had a twin-size bed with a trundle. We pulled the trundle out and it was broken. So we took the mattress off the trundle and put it on the floor. My first night, I was Aida to her Amneris. I slept at her feet. And when I was awakened rudely by a water bug that crawled across my hand, I said, Jesus, take the wheel. But that's what it was like. It was not easy and glamorous and all these things that they want you to think starting a career or at the humble. So this was a very humble beginning for me. So got there, was sick, had to postpone my audition at the Met. But then when I got better, I went back. So I got to the Met, sang my audition, and I was so nervous. I said to them, excuse me, can I just get a sip of water? They said to me, if you keep singing like that, you can have anything you want. I said, okay. So I finished my audition. I had people patting me on the back as I left. They it was so good. I had this one woman in tears. And you know, I really, to this day, as I sit here telling you these stories, it never dawned on me that that's what I would end up doing with my life. I was just doing. I just kept doing the next thing, kept doing the next thing. Because sometimes we can get so stuck in our heads that it's like, I wish, I hope, just calm down and just do it. And that's basically what I was doing. I was just doing it. So I ended up getting my first cover contracts, which is like being an understudy. My first cover contracts with the Metropolitan Opera, which were Aida, and then I covered Amelia, and actually ended up doing Amelia and Umbalo and Mascara. Did do Aida several times, and covered Ariadne of Naxos, so at the Met. So once I got my cover contracts at the Metropolitan, I was there for a couple of seasons, and then it was it was an audition. I'm trying to think. Wait a minute, baby. After I started my cover contracts, as a cover, you have to go to all of the rehearsals, okay? Of course. You have your cover rehearsals, which you as a cover, you never touch the stage, okay? You are in all of the bowels of the Met and in the upper echelon parts of the Met, but you're not on that stage, okay? But you're learning, you're coaching, you're staging, you know the role inside and out, okay? But you just never get a chance to get on the stage. Well, it's time for the Sitzprobe, which is a big orchestra rehearsal. It's the first orchestra read for the orchestra with the conductor there, all of the singers that are doing the roles, and then all of the covers that are doing the roles. The cover customarily sits behind the person that they're covering, okay? And you're watching the conductor, and you are listening to the orchestra, and you're taking notes, and you're doing all these things to make sure that just in case you get the opportunity to step in, that you are ready. Because like I said before, it's better to be prepared with no opportunity than to have the opportunity and not be prepared. Well, with this particular, because I had done it a couple of times by that time as far as covering, with this particular Sitzprobe that came up, The soprano that was singing the role of Aida came up to me actually the day before. And she said, Angela, I am having an allergic reaction to a cat that stayed in the apartment. Here come that cat again. A cat that had stayed in the apartment that I rented. And so I'm having, some problems with that. So I may not be able to sing my Sitzprobe tomorrow. And I was like, okay, I'll be prepared. Well, that morning comes, as a cover, I always dress for the occasion. And I always take something to do with my hands. So I have my crochet or my knitting. And they say that those that crochet and knit during rehearsals and stuff, they end up having cover butt, which means your butt spreads because all you're doing is sitting around, eating, and crocheting. Okay? I had cover butt big time. So I get to rehearsal that morning, and she comes in and she goes, are you ready? And I said, am I ready? She was like, Angela, I told you yesterday that I may not be able to do this. And I was like, I'm ready. Girl, I'm ready. Ain't no problem. I said, excuse me. I go into the bathroom. I start to warm up. As I am warming up in the ladies' room, out of the stall walks Renee Fleming. I said, it's Renee. And then something said, she got a job. You don't have time to fangirl right now. Keep warming up. I'm like, hey! And so I keep warming up, getting ready for this, for the possibility of me singing. I go back into the rehearsal room or the orchestra room, and she goes, I tell you what, I will sing the first part, and if I feel like I can't do this, I'll let you know. I was like, okay. And so I'm sitting there, and I'm actually sitting in her seat and didn't realize it, and in the front row. And she's sitting in the back over in the corner. She stands up, she sings, and she sounds great to me. Then she turns to me and goes, and I said, and so with blinders on and like a newborn coat, I stood up, knees shaking, and then I just got with the conductor. I sang all of Aida that morning, and it was like I was on autopilot. And at 2:30 was the break time. I had a friend of mine come over and say, Angela, you were so good, blah, 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 blah. Actually, it was Morris Robinson. That's another name you might know, but you may not know. I am name dropping like a mug up in here. But Morris Robinson, he was young at the Met at the time as well. And he says, everybody has come through here from upstairs, all through, ear hustling, listening to you. Because at the Met, they can just flip a switch and listen to the rehearsals in the offices. Well, what I understand is after they heard a little bit of the rehearsal, they decided to come down to see for themselves. Now, these are all stories. I don't know for sure, but that afternoon, after I had sung Aida the second time, because remember, I'm a cover. This is the first rehearsal, okay, for the orchestra. All of the singers are there. That means they're getting ready to go on stage. So we had to, as covers, make sure that all of our staging was solid before we could leave and then sit in the audience to watch them hit their marks on stage, okay? So I had to sing Aida twice that day. Once as a rehearsal, the second time actually performing it, but in the rehearsal rooms. I get home, get back to the Bronx, because remember I had moved to the Bronx with my girlfriend. Got back to the Bronx, 45-minute train ride up to White Plains Road and 219, had cut my phone off. When I turned on my phone, it was just, I had all these ding ding notifications coming in, whatever. They weren't called notifications back then, but just letting me know that something, I had phone calls. And I listened and I heard my agent Janet screaming, Angela, Angela, what did you do? The Metropolitan Opera called and wants you and gave you a contract for 14 performances, and 2 of them will incorporate your debut. What did you do? I said I sang. I was prepared with no opportunity. Then to have the opportunity and not be prepared. So that's how I got my debut in 2004, October 29th, 2004, at the Metropolitan Opera.
Wow, incredible. Oh my gosh. So, I mean, that led you to a full-on career of being a leading lady, and I saw in a lot of Verdi as well.
So yes, I'm a Verdian soprano. I've done a lot of Verdi operas. I've had the opportunity to sing on 6 continents, always being very true to myself. I do a show called Opera from a Sistah's Point of View that demystifies opera for audiences that normally wouldn't go. Now, at first, I really thought that it was only black audiences. Black people didn't like opera because I didn't see very many in the audiences, on the stage, or even backstage when I was on stage. So I just knew this was a black thing. But y'all, as soon as I started doing this show, I found out white folk don't like opera either. And it's about being exposed. It's about letting you know that opera is just stories about the peoples of the world. You have Aida, that's an African love story. It just happens that Egypt and Ethiopia are in Africa. And they have love and war and hate and all of the things, all of the human, emotions and situations happening there too. So Aida is that story about African love. There's Carmen, that is about Latinx or Hispanic peoples of the world. You have Turandot, or Madame Butterfly, which is about Asian peoples of the world. You have Porgy and Bess, African American people. I mean, the beat go, and then of course you have the Toscas, and you have the Valkyries, and all of those that are German or Italian. Those are about peoples of the world. That's all opera is. And me as an opera singer, I've always felt that one of my jobs is to help, edutain, if you will, the masses, to let them know that they too can find themselves in opera, and that it's something that is easy and palatable if you do just a little bit of homework before you go to an opera. You read the plot synopsis. You can even go to the theater after you done bought your ticket. Go to the theater a little early, sit down, and open the playbill. And they'll have the plot synopsis of the opera. You can read the first act, see what it's all about, then settle in, sit back, and watch and listen to the story that will come out of the singers' voices. And then at intermission, you can read the second half if it's too much of a digestive stretch to read it all at once. But it's just a matter of exposing yourself, exposing your children, because some of the best audiences are when I go and sing to a bunch of 5th graders, and they leave the audience, and as I am saying goodbye to them, I turn my back, and then I hear them as they're going to get on the buses. They're making all these sounds, and that's when I know I got them. And they're going to go home and tell their mamas and daddies about it. And then people will start to show up to these theaters or the green spaces or any churches, any place where they can find this music. Opera from a Sistah's Point of View has been able to open up these venues for them and open up their minds to it. So that is one of my things that I do. And then I have my foundation, Morning Brown, that helps to basically do the same thing that Opera from a Sistah's point of view does, but it's the umbrella organization for it, okay? And we are interested in educating, embracing, and loving audiences and cast members and people behind the stage. We want to make it a big smorgasbord of diversity, that everyone that chooses to love opera and classical music can have those opportunities. And so these are definitely loves of my life. While I still perform to a high level, I do have these passion projects and organizations that I love to commit my time to. Currently, I am the artistic educational ambassador for the Indianapolis Opera. And I have a studio at the Basile Opera Center that is the Angela Brown Vocal Studio. And I give voice lessons to the novice, to those professionals in the field. I'm a voice teacher, and I try to love my students into their voices. I don't try or push my agenda of what their instrument should sound like. Now, I ain't a miracle worker, but no stretch of the imagination. But I got a good ear, and I can help you. Like I tell all my students when I give a master class, I was like, now, there's no sense of being afraid of me because I don't have a job for you. But if you listen, I might be able to help you get one. And I met my agent at Indiana University, Janet Gerald, who was the daughter-in-law of the dean of the School of Music there. And she, actually, the first time we met, I did a concert at, what is the church at 46 and Illinois? It's not St. Thomas. It's, I can't think of that church. But anyway, I was doing a concert here in Indianapolis, and Dean Webb was playing for me, and Janet actually turned pages for that concert. And she was the one that produced my first ever CD. Dean Webb, remember I was telling you that we went to Africa to do a concert. Well, actually, yeah, we went to Africa. But before we went to Africa, we went to Stanford University to do a week of residency out there. And Helen Bing, who you will see her name at the end of all these documentaries, her and her husband Peter, were at the Casper's home, which was President Casper at Stanford University at the time. And I did a recital there. And Condoleezza Rice was there. And it was just a heady time at this table of food. And we're having conversation. And Helen Bing turns to me and says, Angela, have you ever thought about doing a CD? I said, the thought's there, but the money is not. And I laughed it off and went on about my business with the rest of the conversation for the evening. She says, well, you know what? I've got to go to Africa in January, but and I've got some things to do in February, but I'll send you something in March. Well, lo and behold, Dean Webb calls me up and says, Angela, I got a check here to do a CD that Helen Bing said she would do for you, so we've got to pull it together. And Janet was the one that produced that CD. And then after that, I turned to Janet, after working with her, I was like, and she was in the School of Arts Administration. And she says, and I say to her, I was like, well, Janet, why don't you manage me? She was like, well, I always thought you would want to go to a big New York manager. I was like, well, if it's not broke, why fix it? And we have been together since 1996 on a handshake agreement. So it just goes to show you that you don't have to be crafty and greedy and have all the quote unquote glitz and glamour. Honey, cream rises to the top. And we have been looked known ever since. My favorite musical is Jesus Christ Superstar. And it's funny because that was the first musical that I did at Crispus Attucks High School here in Indianapolis. But I love Jesus Christ Superstar. I enjoy going to see Yuletide every year. Not only have I had the opportunity to host that program for 3 years, I have enjoyed watching Sandy Patty and others come in and do the hosting jobs. And Jack Everly and Ty Johnson have done a great service to the Indianapolis community by having something else with the Indianapolis Symphony having such a high caliber program for the community to enjoy every year. And I have been blessed to be able to work with the Indianapolis Symphony. And actually I have a project that's being written for me by James Lee III. And it is about the life and times of Coretta Scott King, and who I got a chance to meet at Indiana University. And you know, she was a classical singer. And so this will be a piece about a 20-minute piece that'll be about her life, and it will be done with, it's going to have its debut with the Indianapolis Symphony. So it's like a full circle situation for me. I am so excited for that, and that's going to be in 2026. So yeah, so I'm very, very excited about that and proud to be a part of the fabric, the musical fabric of Indiana.